All right, and three, two, one, press play. So, Twister is one of my favorite movies of all time, hands down. And I really like the opening over here that made it look like, you got the clouds and everything. And just like the trailer, which you're obviously seeing in the background. And unfortunately, I'm only limited to trailer. I can't show clips because even though this is not monetized, YouTube still blocks it. So I guess I'm just limited to trailer footage. And if it blocks it again, I guess I'm going to have to find some other means or whatnot. Maybe I'll just do thumbnails of the movie or something like that. But anyway, when you look at the classic trailer, it's like this movie was advertised to be like a horror type of film with tornadoes being the theme. And in the beginning of this film, which you're seeing right now, if you're following along, from the opening titles up until everything you see in the beginning of the film, which we're going to discuss as it goes on, it really seems that way. It really seems like you're going to be in for like a horror movie, but that's actually not the case at all. The tone changes quite a bit afterwards. Now, are there still a few moments to where, it's time to be serious or maybe a little bit scared here and there? Yes. And as a matter of fact, when I saw this back in the day in the movie theater, there was actually a movie theater right next to my apartment complex that I was living at. It was like within walking distance. Like as soon as you left the apartment, a 5-minute walk, there it was, right? So I saw this movie in theaters 7 times. It would have just been 5 times, but I saw it 7 times because I went into the wrong theater and I ended up watching the movie in the middle of it, and I thought I was just late or whatnot. But I just went in through the wrong door. So I told them, they're like, yeah, you can watch it again. And then I ended up watching it again. But I think I saw like 2 halves or whatever it was. But I still saw it because it's Twister and I enjoyed the hell out of that movie. So here you see Helen Hunt's characters when she was a young little girl or whatnot, which kind of plays a role into the story to a certain effect. And basically, like, you're very much like thinking this is like a horror type of film. And at first, when you're looking at the dog, you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to leave the dog or whatnot. I mean, it's very, and then when she calls the dog will obviously follow her. So that's good. I'm glad she actually called the dog, because that's definitely one of those things you don't want to leave behind. But it's like, it's like they didn't even pick up the dog. It's like, I understand it's a crucial moment, but it's like, dude, I remember when we had a few hurricanes over here and I live in Florida, I remember that some people left their animals behind, and it was all over the news, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I believed it, but I was like, these people really are just not like, I could go on and on about that, but I mean, we still live in a day and age to where people don't realize that animals are members of the family, just like every other member of the family, regardless of the fact that they're dogs. It doesn't matter. So, and I'm glad he opened back up and got the dog back in, so that's good. And the special effects in this movie were really good. The special effects in this movie were really good. In my opinion, they still hold up to this day. Obviously you can see like in certain instances where it wasn't as good, but for the most part, they really did a good job with the special effects in this film, actually. And there were movies that came out many years after this one that just didn't hold up as well, or were about as even as this, even though it was like maybe a decade later. Like I remember The Day After Tomorrow came out 10 years after this film, and the special effects were more or less the same in terms of the quality of the twist of the tornadoes and the twisters. So, because every single time I see a movie that has tornadoes in it, I'm always going to compare it to this film. Because as far as tornadoes go, obviously this movie is the standard in my opinion. And then you see the poor guy get like sucked into the vortex of an F5, which is the biggest category of tornado. And today, in this day and age, they're called EF5s. They added in another letter for whatever reason, but it is what it is. But in my time back then, especially when I was very interested in tornadoes after this movie, and even did additional research to find out more, I was kind of inspired, actually. And I did my own research. I even did a school project on it, and I knew so much. And just off the top of my head, I didn't have to study or anything because of all the education over the time that I put in through after this film, and then of course during this film as well. So, but I ended up going into this movie kind of scared, thinking it was going to be like a horror movie or something like that, and then basically by the time I got out, I found it one of the best movies ever. It was one of the most entertaining and fun movies that I saw, and I went and saw it multiple times, obviously more than any other film to this day that I've seen in movie theaters. And in this day and age, I normally don't see a movie more than once in this day and age. But I really, once you get to this point right here after the NSSL scene, basically with the with the music, the music obviously always sets the tone for a specific scene in the movie or whatnot. But the tone of this film is it's fairly balanced. You got some funny moments in there. You've got serious and scary moments in there, and then you got your in between drama moments. But I think this film, and I'm not being biased by any means. I'm just saying it. I'm saying what I think. I actually have to say that I very much enjoy. I very much enjoy the balance that this movie has, because this movie really does have balance in terms of how it presents everything. And I think the casting was good too. I think the casting was good. And Bill Paxton, rest in peace, Bill Paxton, aka Hudson from Aliens, as well. He fought to get a sequel done, and it just never happened for whatever reason. There was word about it, but it just never happened. And I would have been there from day one if it ever did. But unfortunately, it just didn't happen. But right now, as of recently, as of a year or so ago, I had heard that it was officially announced that a sequel is finally in the works, and it's going to be called Twisters. And I wonder who's going to be in the film. I would like to see Helen Hunt reprise her role. I don't see why not. But I would also like to see what they do. I would also love to see what they do. Are they going to be kids of Helen and Bill or whatnot? And what are they going to do with the Bill character? Is he going to be mentioned? I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do with the character, because Bill is obviously not around anymore. But for me, I really loved the character of Bill. And on top of that, you got Philip Seymour Hoffman over here as well, that just, like in this film right here, he's obviously to an extent the comic relief, but it just goes to show you just how much of a good actor he really is, like a terrific actor. And I remember briefly listening to the commentary, or actually I did listen to the commentary of this film, if I remember correctly. And the director, Jan de Bont, who also directed Speed as well, he was complimenting Philip Seymour Hoffman's acting ability tremendously. So, and with this film, he did a really good job just showing how volatile he could be. Because when you look at Philip Seymour Hoffman, he plays in a lot of serious roles. I mean, he's just very volatile. Like, if you've seen all the movies that he's been in, like, there's just so many different types of characters that he plays, and he's damn good at them. So whether he's serious, like in Mission Impossible 3, or whether he's, not so serious, like in this film, it just goes to show you, man. And when you have a movie, especially like when I was a kid, when you have a movie where you absolutely hate the person that you see because they're playing a villain, and then in another movie you absolutely love the same actor because he's playing a hero or a much better part, it's like that just goes to show you, that's like proof right there that that's a damn good actor or actress. So, and Helen Hunt, obviously in her prime, she was definitely a crush of mine back then. And I never watched her TV show Mad About You, which was what she was mostly known for. I never watched it, but yeah, she was like my crush in this film. Beautiful woman. But Obviously, as I've grown up even more, and when I saw this film first, I was like 11 years old, and 11 or 12, and basically, I wanted to. I was all about Helen Hunt, but as I've grown up, I've I actually like the woman that Bill is dating now. She's a cutie herself. And I'm like, I think I prefer her over Helen Hunt, or I don't know, maybe I could just go back and forth. I'm not sure. But the story of the film goes that obviously Helen Hunt's character is that little girl from what you saw in the very beginning of the film. And it's actually, you can fill in the blanks pretty easily of how and why she became a storm chaser with what had happened in the beginning of the film. And Bill and Joe, which is Helen's character, are basically about to get a divorce, and these are the divorce papers, and he wants to make sure that it's all said and done so that way it can be finalized, and he's getting married to the new woman. And yeah, so yeah, it's one of those stories, but it carries very, very well in this film, and they actually did a really good job with it. They didn't necessarily, rub it in your face like, this is what we're doing. So, and at this point, basically, like, she delays it, and then after that, it's they're explaining to Melissa everything that goes on and stuff like that, and then eventually, what ends up happening is, uh, and by the way, my DVD for whatever froze in this, so I just kind of had to improvise. So we should be at the scene right now, really, if not really close to where they start to take off, and because they got news of a Twister forming, so they always got to stay ahead of everything, and they're packing all their shit up. But they're basically explaining everything to Melissa about how Dorothy works, the machine works, and he gets to, and he gets to show it off and to see it and everything like that. So at this point right now, we're at the scene where everybody's basically taking off, which is probably a little bit ahead of where before everything froze, but tried to get it to fix. So I apologize if I'm off by like a minute. But basically at this point right now, she hasn't signed the papers, the divorce papers or whatnot, and they're walking away and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh crap. And basically he's following her and everything. So, and basically Bill, even though he's not back, he was just there for the divorce papers. He's kind of, because he needs the papers signed, he's kind of chasing after her now. And then what ends up happening is he kind of joins the crew just for one day, and that's what he used to do. He used to be the lead storm chaser. He was the guy that was in charge, and he can certainly predict everything. That's another thing too, is he can predict. He's like a human barometer according to the story. So, and then of course you get introduced to Cary Elwes and his crew, which are basically, Cary was one of the guys that was on Bill's team, and then he went and formed his own team and got himself corporate sponsors and went in it for the money and all that kind of stuff. Kind of made to look like a bad guy. He is a dick, but it is what it is. But again, Cary Elwes, always a good actor, very versatile. You've seen him in Robin Hood Men in Tights, for instance, and seen him in Saw as Dr. Gordon, to name a few. But yeah, he plays a role in this as well. So I guess you got your good guy storm chasers, and then you got your bad guy storm chasers or whatnot, or so it is what it is. So, but yeah, when you get as far as this film, you could tell that there's a lot of flavor over here. And then at the end of the day, you're also noticing that, hey, this is actually not a horror film. Um, there are a few elements here and there. There's no doubt about it. It's part of the film because it is about tornadoes after all. But there's more to it in the film. So in terms of the ratio, I'm actually pretty impressed of how they did it between the story and making that relevant without necessarily like overdoing it, and then you've got the special effects and then the action of the chase and the twisters themselves, and then some drama here and there in a story, and then you've got the other team. This film actually, with the amount that it has in it, is actually again pretty balanced. And then of course, Bill thought that Jonas didn't have Dorothy, but he's got Dot, Dot 3 or whatnot, or Dot. So that's pretty cool. Fancier look about that. And yeah, Bill just does not like that because he stole his idea and took it for himself. So you got team versus team over here. So but yeah, so you kind of got the red team versus blue team over here and stuff like that. So with everything, with it being personal now, Bill actually has no Bill's going to alter his plans a little bit and join the team like he used to. So, and back then all that equipment right there was very cutting edge. So, and it's amazing even all these years later after this film came out, it really is amazing that all of these, like, we're still not able to predict Mother Nature as well as we think we can, right? And it just goes to show you, man, which is true. So, and then tornadoes obviously they cause an enormous amount of damage. And then whenever an F5, or in today's age an EF5, comes to fruition, I remember there was a big one in 2013, which was like probably the biggest, or the tornado that did the most damage ever. I believe it started in Oklahoma, and then obviously there's been tornadoes that have gone through across multiple states. So can't underestimate Mother Nature, man. And in this scene right here, you start to see Bill's gift, so to speak, right? To where he just knows, he can just tell. That's the thing about the character that I personally really liked, is that there was so much that you could tell, because like he's just gifted. And even the other team, Jonas's team or whatnot, he like if he sees Bill going in one direction, there's sometimes he follows because he knows that Bill can, you know or he'll wait and see what Bill does because he knows, because Bill is just, again, he's described as a human barometer by Joe, or Aunt Meg used to call him human barometer, and you'll see Aunt Meg later on in the film. So yeah, see, he's gonna wait and see what Bill does. So and then Bill is just checking out everything and trying to see where things are forming from, and taking some dirt off the ground to see where the wind is coming from and all that good stuff. So, and then from this point on, he basically kind of turns into the Bill before he stopped being a part of the team, before the divorce or the split. But, well, it's not official divorce, but before he and Joe split up. And then he basically takes over from this point on in the film. And it's made very apparent. So he's like, Dusty gets behind him. Phyllis Seymour Hoffman's character, Dusty, gets behind him, and he's gonna be like, "Hey man, what's up?" And he's like, "Yellow and green," and he's like, "Okay, settle him up." And then he's like, "You got it, boss." So it's like, they follow Bill because they respect him tremendously, and you see that in the film. You see that in the film. He's a leader, but he's a natural leader. He doesn't he's not a pushy guy like somebody like Jonas, for instance, that Jonas could be. So, and then of course you got the tension developing between the two ladies. She obviously still loves Bill, and then she's, Melissa's obviously about to marry Bill, or at least she thinks she's going to marry Bill, and you got this going on. I actually felt bad for her character towards the end of the film, but you'll see what I mean. So, yep, and then you can see in the background you got some yellow and green going on, so it's like, yeah. See, and then you can see the difference right there. Like, Bill isn't using anything fancy. He's just using his instincts and his knowledge and his gift, his natural gift or whatnot. And then Jonas, of course, is relying on technology. So it's like, um, holy, it's like there's the big difference right there. So again, Bill taking over. So, and nobody's gonna argue with him. So, and Joe doesn't argue with him or anything like that. She doesn't say nothing. He takes the keys and she just pauses for a second. She's like, okay. So, yeah. And then, of course, you got Philip Seymour Hoffman doing his thing in as his character as Dusty. And and as you can see, like they did some really good job with the special effects in this film. Like with that previous picture, like when you're looking at the clouds sometimes, and when the clouds are getting like really dark, and when you're starting to see like, some really scary clouds forming, it looks very real even to this day, and believable to this day, and its special effects. And I think I mentioned this earlier in the commentary, I believe Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, George Lucas's stuff helped with the special effects of this film. And it shows, if that was the case, if I'm not mistaken. And it shows. Certainly didn't hurt this film at all. And then as you can see in this film that she's a doctor, she's a therapist. So, and you can see right there in and the thing is where they filmed also was I believe where did they film? I think they filmed in Oklahoma or whatnot. But so you also saw some real stuff. You didn't just see, like, it's not like all the clouds that you're seeing all the time, whether they're good or bad. It's not like you're seeing special effects every time. And I wouldn't be surprised if they actually used special effects to enhance the way the certain clouds look. So you had a little bit of real and fake put in at the same time in there. So, yeah, like that right there. It looks really good, but it could be real, but you never know. It might not be. It could be a painting. So, but, it's what you do, especially back in the 90s, where you were relying on a lot of technology, but at the same time it wasn't necessarily the biggest technique that you would use. You would use many different ways in order to enhance your film. So that's something you really can't underestimate. When you have a film that came out so long ago, it's and it still stands up fairly well to this day. You got to respect it. And then, of course, you got the conversation that's going on between these two, and there's a little bit of comedy going on. She's like, "Is she your therapist?" I thought that was hilarious. Hilarious. I'm assuming Joe's character is. I'm assuming Helen Hunt's character in this movie might have a little bit of the character that she played in Mad About You. I'm assuming so. But I love the. So despite the fact that these guys are apparently getting divorced or supposedly getting divorced, they're getting along pretty well and stuff like that. Now, I don't know if a lot of couples were like that during the 90s when they got divorced, or if there were a fairly amount of couples that were like that acted like that around each other, because in this day and age it just seems like when people are getting divorced, they just want to be up and down each other's throats. But at the same time, this is a movie, so it's not going to be like based off of reality. There's a lot in this, like there's some truth in these movies obviously, but there's a lot of things that happen with the twisters, especially in this movie, that just wouldn't happen in real life, especially like, let's say towards the end, right? To where they're literally like 5 to 10 yards away from an F5 and they're running away from it and they're not getting sucked in. There's just no way. From an F5 that big that ends up showing up at the end of the film, they just don't. Yeah, it just no. That thing would be sucking you in from a long ass distance. So, and then the first twister makes its appearance. So, and I like how they do that in the film. It's like it'll start with an F1, and then later on you end up getting you getting some water spouts with multiple water spouts, and then you get an F2 or a 3 or something like that, and then later on you end up getting an F4, and then of course at the end of the movie you get F5. So I like how they did that in this film. They just constantly progressed it. So, and then Jonas's team finds out that they made a left turn over here, and he's like, "Yep, I think they went left here." He's like, "Yep, do it." So, but with all the technology that they have, they're always one. They're usually in this film most of the time. They're actually a step behind Bill's team. And again, these these special effects again still hold up to this day. And I really like how they made they got the color right, they got the movement right. It just looks really good. And when you're looking at a twister and you see the way it moves, it's like, yeah, it's hard to predict these things. It could go anywhere at any time. And look at that. That looks awesome. So, but Bill's character, again, his gift is that he can very much sense where a tornado is going to go. He's not God, but he's got that gift to where it's like he can just tell. Some things you just can't explain why you're good at them and why you're able to see things or notice things or do things that other people can't. We all have a gift. So basically in this movie it's shown that that's what Bill's gift is. I wish, in this first film, especially in the beginning, was kind of centered around Joe's character, and that it comes up later on in the film. But I would have really liked to know some more background information about Bill's character, and this is where things really start to pick up. And then, just so you know, there's a little bit of a lion roar, so to speak, and tornadoes don't do that, but from what I understand, tornadoes do have like that train sound. I mean, it sounds like a train or whatnot. So, as well as everything else that comes with it. And there's usually like a calm before the storm. Sometimes you get like some quietness, and it just doesn't happen, or it does happen. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the effects in terms of what you're seeing is pretty damn spot on. And at the same time, it really just depends on where the twister lands and how there's depending on how much dust or anything else is in there. So. Oh yeah, see, like in this case right here, I mean, when you're getting this fucking close to a twister like that, these guys would have been sucked in. There's no doubt about it. Just because this is an F1, or maybe even an F2, doesn't mean that it's weak sauce. I mean, you're a human being. You're gonna get sucked in like that. So of course, Bill and Joe are basically over here, and you're starting to see at this point right now, see, she's crawling out there towards it, and you're like, okay, something is wrong. It's like something's up. So, but then at the same time, you're like, okay, she's the kid from the very beginning of the film, so you kind of understand why she might be a little bit off. And then, of course, I mean, it just goes to show you right there. It's like even an F1 doesn't necessarily have to be that close in order to lift the truck off the ground. So, but yeah, overall, the effects were really good and get nice close up and everything of what a sucker like this could do. And yep, good effects. Good effects. And then, of course, where's my truck? And then, boom, I remember people in the theater were kind of laughing at that. They're like, "Where's my truck?" And then boom, it just falls in her. She's like, "Oh, there it is." So things like the things that happen in this film that do not happen to this extent, obviously, in a real storm chase. At least 90% of the time, if not more. So they just don't happen to this extent. So, um, you know what the funny thing is? You know, she says you told me you used to chase tornadoes. I thought it was just a metaphor, and it's like, huh. And then their first Dorothy is gone. Thankfully, they've got three more. So, you know, as an audience member, you're like, yeah, chances are the other two Dorothys out of the three are going to be trashed as well. So, and then Philip Seymour Hoffman being the comedic relief, and he's laughing, and he's like, "Oh, it did fly." She's like, "What was it like?" It was windy. So you gotta love Philip Seymour Hoffman, man. He's just such a good actor, man. Such a good actor, you know. And that's his gift, you know. His gift is, speaking of gifts, it's just absolutely incredible. Just when you watch what he does, and he just stands out, man. It's like every scene that he's in, like this one right here. I mean, just he look at this. I wouldn't be surprised if this was improvised. I would be I wouldn't be surprised if that was improvised, to where he actually just got up on the side of the car and was like, "Give me a kiss, man." You know, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So, and then they pick up all those sensors, which are probably expensive as hell, and they can be reused because they are meant to be sucked up by the tornado. So, and you know that that red truck, which I'm sure this movie probably helped boost its sales a little bit. Yeah, she's like, don't even think about it. No, we're not using the truck. No way. And then of course it ends up happening. So yeah, at this point, these guys are starting to rekindle, and this poor woman in the middle over here is. And then Melissa's right. She's like, you almost died the last time. You were going again, and he's like, nah, just a close call. And so seeing she looks back at him and he looks back at her to get reassurance, like, hey, are we doing this? And you know, he's got the look that we are. And then she's, you know, because again, that's his gift. You know, he's, you know, he knows if it's a go or not. So, and he's going 50 something miles an hour, and she's disappointed. So I guess he used to go really fast. So of course he's gonna start going faster now. So some cool shit. And then you got another twister over there, and this one is an F2 probably. And then look at the clouds. You see the difference of the clouds? I mean, I like little things like that. Things like that catch my attention. And I like how they did that. I like how they enhanced that. So a little exaggerated. You could tell. You could tell slightly, but it still looks good. It still looks real. And then you've got the old laptops. I wanted one of those when I was a kid. So, and then you got ESSL, of course, doing their thing, helping guide the team, etc., etc. And you can see all these guys are like they've got more technology than Bill's team has. But at the same time, the movie shows that it's not all just about technology, and you can only do so much and only predict so much. And this scene over here is a prime example right here. You'll see in just a second. And I always love that. I've always loved that. It's like one man's gift will be more powerful than uh, technology will ever be, so to speak, right? It's like humans, you know, humans are just something special about a human being with a gift, you know, because every one of us has a gift. We just try to find out what that is. And look, he sees something and he stops immediately. And everybody else is like, what the hell is going on? And those guys are going that way. And then Bill just stops, and his team stops as well, of course, because they follow his lead. And they're like, "Look," he's like, "Look at the angle of that thing; it's going to shift." And she's like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yup." So, and then the next thing you know, they make the turn, they make the change, they all follow, and then at the last minute, what ends up happening is that the twister ends up shifting. So, um, so yeah, Bill's gift, man. I like the little subtle things like that in movies. Um, so it's like you guys got your technology, but we got Bill. That's a pretty good size F2 tornado too, as well. And at the same time, looking different than the first one, of course, with each twister having its own quote unquote personality in a sense, and it's starting to shift. Got the binoculars out, and yep, there they are. So, and then you're starting to get some rain picking up, and this is where things get interesting because we start to see multiple water spouts, which is pretty cool. So, and you see basically how Bill's team handles everything with communication and all that stuff. And at the same time, you see how Jonas's team does things, and it's similar but yet different. I mean, these guys have just basically have laptops and stuff like that, and maybe like they have a lot less equipment. They don't have the kind of financing that Jonas's team has, but yet at the same time they have enough. So, and that's good that you're getting the team that's also like in the scenes like that, because they're not just there for just to be like a part of the team. It's like they're playing a role as well. So, you know, because you got one of those guys, Rabbit, for instance, who's that's what they call him at least. I mean, I don't know if that's his real name or not. Well, I mean, not his real name, but character's name probably. Like, you know, he's the map guy. He knows directions very well, and then of course you got the other supporters or whatnot. So, and then Bill's instructing his team to hold back, and then Joe's worried because he's like, okay, and then of course they listen. I mean, it's, you know, you love that. You just love to see it. It's like, you know, hang back, and then they hang back, and then of course you get the scene with the water spouts, which is pretty cool. You got two water spouts, and then the color palette is different. Then you can look at the clouds up top, the rotating, which means there's more water spouts coming. So, and that looks really good too. The special effects crew really did a good job with this. And these water spouts, even though they're weaker, they're quite faster. So, um, and in real life, storm chasers probably wouldn't do this. So, and then they split up. I've seen some footage to where tornadoes actually can split up like that, which is pretty cool. And of course, at the same time, they can also combine to form a tornado as well. So, nice little camera angle by the car tire over there too. And then of course the scene that made the movie, the cow. So I gotta go. We got cows, and then of course, you know, poor cow going back and forth. And then Melissa and her facial expressions are just priceless. The actress is doing a really good job. And then of course you got the rotating tornadoes, and I'm sorry, the rotating twisters, and they're getting really close, and they have to put up the brakes. And they're lucky in this one that they walked away with their lives, even though water spouts are very weak. But at the same time, it could have been worse. This definitely could have been worse. So, um, the way you look at it like this is the car is getting a hell of a car wash, in a sense. And the sound effects too. The sound effects in this movie was awesome. You know, I really like the sound effects, even though there was a couple of them that obviously weren't so real or whatnot. But yeah. And the poor lady over here is just scared shitless. And that's not, she's not just dealing with that, she's literally watching those guys kind of get back together again, slowly but surely. And how long have these guys been together anyway? That's what I want to know. I wonder how long those guys have been together and getting married already. It's like, how long, really? Yeah. So right now, again, you know, we've had a couple of encounters with the tornadoes, and it's like the movie's gonna kind of slow down again, and then after that, it's gonna pick back up, and then it's really gonna pick back up. Um, so yeah, I mean, it slows back down one more time, but not like what you're about to see here. This is kind of like almost like a halftime break, so to speak. And and yeah, like yeah, we're not going to her aunt's house, but lo and behold, they're going to her aunt's house. The team is hungry. And I wonder if she ever chased tornadoes or if she was a part of the team or something like that. I'm not sure. Or maybe she's just Joe's aunt. And it just goes to show you like it's just a natural organic type of feeling. It's like every single member of this film actually did a really good job of like literally being like they really did a good job making everything look like family. And then of course you got your steak and eggs. And the thing about steak and eggs, man, it doesn't have to be breakfast. It could be lunch, it could be dinner, it could be whatever. And then beer, lemonade, homemade lemonade, and then steak and eggs, some Tabasco sauce from what I see over there, some ketchup, of course. Like I know if you're from Jersey, ketchup on eggs is like a religion at this point. So look at that. Nice piece of ribeye, and then you're gonna have your mashed potatoes and gravy and everything. Phillips Seymour was just dousing her in gravy. He's got his tongue out and shit. Oh shit. Just the little things that make me laugh. And then of course we've got Jonas on the news. Yeah. And what's really cool about this scene is not only are you getting like the entire family vibe, but you're also getting other members of the team that are basically like showing off a little bit more of who they are and what their personalities are like and the relationship between all the characters, which is really important because it really also makes the main characters that much more more relatable, understandable, and everything like that. So, and at the same time, it gives also the other actors more screen time, which is always a good thing. So, And then, of course, you know, Joe is obviously not over Bill. And yeah, you got all these guys telling stories about how Bill was butt naked at one point in time when they were chasing or something like that. And, you know, yeah, so apparently he threw a bottle of so I guess Bill was an alcoholic, I guess, or something like that. And he just threw a bottle into the twister and it didn't hit the ground or whatnot. So yeah, very family type of atmosphere with these guys, and you can tell that they've been chasing for a long time. And a little bit more about tornadoes and stuff like that, and then the conversation kind of ends up turning serious when Melissa asks about if there's ever an F5, and only one of them has seen an F5. Bill's never seen an F5 actually, not until the end of the film. Joe was the only character that has seen an F5, and everybody knows about the story, and that's why they yeah. So, and that was the only time that Joe ever saw an F5 in her entire career. And everybody knows the story of what happened. So, and that's why everybody just kind of stopped for a second and the tone changed immediately. So, and then it's only minutes from now to uh where this film really starts to kick up. So, it's like you've gotten a good taste of it and then it kicks up and then it seems like it's going to slow down and it doesn't. And then it just pretty much doesn't let up until the movie's over. But uh but at a reasonable pace as compared to just throwing things in your face. I mean, they do it right in this film. So, and when you see this film as an adult compared to how it was when you were a kid, there's certainly other things that you see that you didn't before. And just above that TV right there, where they found out there was another one coming, so there was also a picture that I didn't notice before of Bill and Joe. Um, Philip Seymour Hoffman, gotta love him. So yeah, at this point they're saying that there's going to be an F3, so they're on it right away. And Rabbit already knows like which path to take and all that, so he's the navigator basically. He knows his way very well. He's a map master basically. It's always good when you have one of those. Of course, the helicopter view over Wakita, you can't go wrong with that. And I just can't help but wonder if I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to replicate the tone of the 90s and the feel of the 90s, but I wonder if Twisters is going to have any of that feel in it, which would be great, but we'll see. You know, I would love Helen Hunt to make a cameo or an appearance at least somehow. Or if they were to do Bill Paxton justice, because he fought so long to get a Twister sequel made, and it's not being made, and now that he's gone, it's been announced that it will be made. So I would love it if they did something like kind of like what they did for Egon in Ghostbusters Afterlife, to where maybe he could make an appearance, but like obviously as a CG character or whatnot. I think that'd be great in some way, shape, or form. A CG character. So yeah. Again, a lot more energy. The team has eaten and they're good to go, and now they're working. So, um, yeah, can't help but enjoy it for what it is. And poor Melissa over here, she's riding with Dusty. She barely knows this guy. She thinks he's a little crazy, and it's part of the comic relief. But at the same time, you know, I feel bad for her character. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure she had a good time filming. So yep, there's the road. There's the road. Should be any moment. Bam, there they go. And caught up with those guys. Just goes to show you, man. And yeah, she's obviously pissed at him. And now the tone of the film starts to change. And you start to hear that in the music. And then obviously you're also seeing that things are starting to get dark. So the theme in the original scene of the movie is starting to kind of show up now. And Bill is already starting to sense things, and he's like, let's turn. And of course the team follows, but Jonas does not. You know, he gets asked, you know, should we follow? And he's like, nope, we do not. So, and Rabbit's starting to wonder, like, where we at, where we're going. And, you know, so there's a touchdown according to the computer that they see there. And they say it's coming down road 33, and they're on 33. So Bill was right. And they can't see anything. It's like, do you see it, Twister? He's like, nope, I don't see anything. And they're looking all over the place for it, and you can't see it. And Bill's like, it's coming right at us. So, and it's getting pretty strong because things are really dark, but they can't see it. So it's like, and things are getting really dark, as you can see, in everything. So no, and it's gonna be right over that hill. So this shot right here with the hill and the clouds being super dark up there, it's like, yep, right there. So they're debating on whether or not they're gonna go, and even Bill's asking, what do you think? And then Joe's like, let's do it. So and this is the scene where we start to see Hale. And as you can see, you know, Bill and Joe are far in front. And then of course you got Hale, and then obviously Bill Paxton actually, like, everything you're about to see Bill Paxton do is true. They had like a Hale making machine to create that. So it's not special effects. It's actually like they had a Hale making machine, and according to him, it hurt like hell. And I don't, yeah, of course it did. So, um, yep. Yeah. And if you ever see clouds like that, it's like, get the hell away. There's no way in the world you're going to see me going near clouds like that. And then, yeah, there it is. Bill Paxton, taking it. And it hurts like hell. It's basically ice coming down on you, and it hurts. So there we go, the F3. And it's about the same size as the previous one, but it's holding more power. So as you can see, it's not always about the size of the twister. But I will say that normally F4s or F5s are also visibly quite larger than F3s, F2s, or F1s. But at the end of the day, it's about the power of the storm as well. But the more powerful it is, the more it sucks in and stuff like that. It's also about the setting too. It's like you're not seeing much dirt. They're on top of a hill. It's on a road. So there's that as well. So, and they're heading right towards it. And it's definitely a strong one. And the special effects are good, but again, a little over exaggerated. Obviously, when you're a kid, it definitely looks more real. But you've seen plenty of tornado footage. It's like, yeah, in that instance, it looks really good. But in other instances, it's like, yeah, you can tell where it's a little exaggerated. And Melissa over here has pretty much had enough. And so she's pretty much had enough. She's like, you guys are nuts. So, and then Bill's trying to get Dorothy ready, because ultimately that's what it's about. So that way they can basically create a better warning system. So that way people can have like 15 minutes instead of just 3 minutes in order to prepare for disaster. And of course, you got the boat that's flying. You don't want to get hit by that. And then Bill's like, you better stop. This is fine. And I'm surprised the windshield didn't break on that one right there. But poor Bill over there took a hit to the head when she hit the brakes suddenly. And that is incredibly close to an F3, which happens a lot in this film. And they get a lot closer than they should at some of these really powerful tornadoes. But it's it's a film. It's kind of like video games in a sense, to where a game can look real, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's everything that goes on in that video game is practical. You know what I mean? So like over here it looks farther, but earlier it looked closer. But at the same time, you got the tornado that's landing in different parts and stuff like that. It's getting to the point to where it's this twister in particular is very unpredictable. So it's like, this is where they basically realize that they've definitely gone in over their heads, and there they go. There's Dorothy. Dorothy's down, so there's not really that much they can do. And at this point, it's all about survival. And then the twister just all of a sudden disappears. Just goes back up and it just disappears, and it gets out of the like the computer even says it's gone. So, and then Joe actually, at this point, Joe even actually predicts that the twister is actually going to come back, because when you look at there's no sign that it's completely finished in terms of the tone, especially when you look at the effects and stuff like that. So it's like at this point they're like, everything is incomplete, you guys need to get out of there, we can't tell anything. So but then you hear that lion roar, which was obviously just for this film, and it's like, yep, it's back building. So it's going to come back again. And when it comes back down, it actually comes down a little bit larger. And then the team's actually telling me you should get out of there. So, and then Joe's trying to pick up the pieces of those things, and Bill's like, no, we need to get out of here because it's going to jump on us. So, yep, see, it came down a little bit bigger, and yep, this is the time where Bill basically took over and he's like, forget it, we're done, we got to back up. So, and then Joe still wants to pick up more pieces. So, and then this is a big scene right here to where they legitimately get into like an argument, and he doesn't, and she's like, and then the Twister is pretty much gone at this point, and she basically tells him like, you've never seen a Twister come after you like to where it misses this house and then it misses that house and then it comes after you. And then Bill's like, you think it really did that? You know, you can't predict it, you know, doing something like this isn't going to bring dad back. So, and at the end of the day, Bill, at the end of the day, is the only one that can really get through to her more than anybody else. Maybe Aunt Meg can get through to her as well, but Bill is the only character that can get through to her like that. And then at this point, Bill makes it very clear that, he still has feelings for her to a certain extent, or not just to a certain extent. And poor Melissa is just heartbroken. And yeah, so, and then the tone of the music and everything. And then actually, the thing is, in this upcoming scene, Jo actually, after that argument, she signs the papers. But, yeah, pretty intense. And again, this, just because you're having this period to where things seem to slow down doesn't necessarily mean they will, because it's just like, the movie gives everything to you in doses. It gave you a pretty big dose, and then it stopped, and then now it's giving you another dose, but it's not as big as the first one, and then it stops, but for a much shorter time, and then it gives you a really big dose. So it's like a big breakfast, a decent lunch, and then a huge dinner. That's basically what this film gives you. And then, of course, you got The Shining making a cameo in this outdoor theater. And again, this particular sequence and everything that goes down is going to be quite see, because the thing is, it's night and they can't see everything coming, so because a lot of those people, if they could see what's coming in this scene, but it's night, if they could see it, because of the fact that it would be daytime, they'd be able to do something about it more. But the computer just goes to show you that it's because the technology isn't where, like, because nobody's gotten Dorothy up yet with what they do have. The Twister gets very close before they know it's coming. And Dusty's the one who notices it. Well, Dusty's the one that notices on the computer, but Jo and Bill are the ones that kind of speculate that something's coming. And of course, poor Melissa. And if you know about tornadoes in terms of what they just showed on TV, that's like Twister circumstances right there, if I'm not mistaken. And then of course there's also a subtle warning to where the TV starts to go a little bit all over the place because of what's actually happening, and they can't tell. And she signs the divorce papers. So yeah, at this point right now, they're just kind of like in a, very emotional state, especially Jo, especially since she just signed those papers. And she's a lot colder in this scene after that encounter. So she's like, right now she's acting like they're divorced and it's done. This is, and then of course you got this girl over here, Melissa, who's looking at her engagement ring and she's just kind of playing around with it. And she's like, do I take this off? Do I not? So here we go. You get the warning on the TV and then you get the warning on the other TV over there. And then Bill doesn't ignore it. And he immediately goes to his instincts. And it's night, so it's a lot harder for him to tell. Otherwise, he would have been able to tell. But he can't because it's night and he can't see, and everything is quiet. And even she suspects something. Even Melissa suspects something. She gets out and she's like, what's going on? So, again, the theme from the very beginning of the film starts to come up in this scene right here, where the music really starts to get like, where it's like, okay, something's coming. And they can't see it. I mean, it's staring at them in the face, but it's night and they can't see it. But I think you do get a glimpse of it briefly when the lightning kind of goes off, like before it's officially unveiled. So trying to take a better look over here as I'm watching, and yep, and then the lightning at that point is like, and then Melissa sees it and she's like, holy shit. So and then Dusty, of course, running and he's like, it's coming. He's like, no, it's already here. So, and this is a big one too. And Joe thinks she sees an F5, and this one in particular, I don't think it's an F5 yet. It's an F4, and it's up there, and it's a big boy too. So you're looking at it, and there it is. It's big. It could be an F5. I think it is because Joe's looking at it, and she's like, "That's what I saw when I was a kid. That's an F5." So it might be an F4 that hasn't powered up to an F5 yet, but could very well be an F5. But in a real situation, that thing is just way too close. There was no way she would just be able to stand there just like that. And that theater screen right there would have been wrecked. But that's a cool effect of how they did that and how they wrecked everything and the twister and everything like that. You can't help but admire all the stuff that they did with this film in terms of the visual effects and everything else. So yeah, it everything pretty much picks up at this point on in the film. So and thankfully there was something under there to where those guys can get under there and get as safe as possible from a big storm like this. Nice little shot right there of the twister basically demolishing the rest of that screen. And if you're an artist or if you're a filmmaker or something like that, you admire little things like that and you try to put things like that in your film as much as possible. So, and basically what this scene also does is it humanizes all the characters, right? Because all the characters in this film are basically like kind of like larger than life. They're the ones that are chasing these things and have a certain level of prediction in terms of what's going to happen or whatnot. But at this point, they're no different than anybody else in a situation like this. So it brings the characters down. It's like it reminds you that, yeah, you got Bill, who's incredibly gifted and is able to do so much and predict so much with his God-given ability, and with all these people as well in terms of what they do for their profession. But at the end of the day, they're still people. They're still humans and stuff like that. So um, so yeah. And at this point, Melissa has pretty much had enough. So um, and then Joe, of course, looking after one of her teammates. and Melissa's obviously had enough. And can't blame her, really. You know, the poor woman was in like a very interesting spot from the very beginning of the film up until this point. So, so yeah. A lot of really cool effects in this entire scene. And then how all of a sudden it's kind of like over, but I don't think this I think this twister is the one that we still see in like for the rest of the film. Um yeah, it actually is, because I remember how they're hearing about it on the news and stuff like that, and it heads towards Wakita, which is where Aunt Meg is. So, which is a character that you know, that we already know and love just because of the scenes that were taken that were in the film previously. So, yeah. And then all of that kind of just starts to go all over the place because the wind is really picking up. Yeah. So, again, definitely picked up the tone in this very scene of the film. Yeah. So, and then you're looking at the destruction and everything like that, and you're like, wow. And lots of stuff from the teams, from the crew's stuff survived. Thank goodness. So, yeah, basically up on the hill was nothing compared to what they just went through. So, none of the team has really been through any of that at this point. And Dusty's tracking it, and it looks to hit Wakita. So, on the news, they're like, yeah, we got to go. So, yeah. See how they put everything together really well. You actually care about the lady that basically, you know, fed all these guys earlier, and the and the family dynamic. So, and basically at this point, she's basically letting Bill go. And this is like the sweetest type of breakup that you can possibly have. And the thing is, she even says she's not that upset about it either. And she's very understanding. So I really love. I like her character actually, and yeah, and then she has to take herself home and stuff like that. And by now, Joe is aware of it at this point, even though her mind is in a completely different state over the last few hours from the previous twister. She's still kind of cold, but at this point, she starts to kind of warm up a little bit more after everything else. So, and the way everything happened. And, you know, Bill is pretty much back at this point, like full on back, you know, 100%, you know, because, and the thing is with Melissa, you know, I really felt bad for her character, man, of how, you know, this sweet woman. That's the kind of woman that basically, you know, and in this scene right here, you see the parents and everything like that, and the little girl, and it's like reminds her of what she went through when she was a kid, because I'm sure their house didn't survive the first scene. You know, obviously the dad didn't survive, unfortunately, but neither did the house. But in this case, you know, they're hoping that they find Meg, and thankfully they do. Thankfully they do, and things end up kind of calming down or whatnot. And then through something that they end up seeing, they find a way to make Dorothy a little bit more effective in terms of maybe possibly making things happen. So, which I guess does help. But at the end of the day, you know, Bill's truck, Bill's truck, I think, is what helped. but but yeah, this is kind of like the darker side of what happens in a natural disaster in terms of the damage that a monster twister can do, or what a hurricane can do, or some other natural disasters out there, what they can do. So, you know, you talk to anybody that's from a state that has a lot of tornadoes, or people that have had experiences with tornadoes or something like that. You know, and you see it. It's not something that's fake. It's real, and it's you know, you can lose your home. You know, your home can be taken away and stuff like taken away by a natural disaster. So, and the first thing you see is the dog. Okay, the dog's okay, and then you hope you find Meg, and they eventually do, thank goodness. So, but yeah, all this stuff does happen, and the film itself really uh does a good job of literally like putting you like in there. This is actually one of the more realer parts of the film, to where um um like this is the stuff that goes down. You know, some of the other stuff is just over exaggerated or whatnot. So, and then you see another side to Dusty or whatnot, because you're so used to seeing Dusty like being the comedic relief, but at this point you can tell he really loves the hell out of Meg. So, um you know, Dusty's that kind of guy. He's that kind of friend that you want and that you always love. So, yeah. And then they get the dog, of course, which is important. He's like, honey, your car's in a tree around the corner. And she's like, oh boy. The good old barn burner truck. So at this point, you know, now that Meg's okay and everything's good, the team is basically back trying to track this thing, and what they're gonna do, if anything. Um, so this is like the last of the quote unquote downtime, which again, there was no downtime up until you find out that Meg is okay and everything like that. So, you know, this is kind of like the final downtime before the last, you know, main event, so to speak, of the movie. And at this point the team knows they're going to be dealing with an F5, and so a little bump on the head and maybe a broken wrist, which is not that bad, and says it doesn't even hurt. And Joe, of course, starts blaming herself because she wasn't there, and it's like, and Meg, of course, being the wise older woman, basically says, stop blaming yourself. You got me out of the house. So this is where it starts to get super personal with Joe. It's always been personal with Joe, but at this point, it's huge. So, excuse me, couldn't avoid that one. And NSSL is predicting an F5, so here we go. The entire team gets to see an F5 this time. And Joe is the only one that has seen one before. So, and that's a big deal. So it's a big deal to the team, because not just because they never seen an F5, but it's like, this is, it's also personal to Joe. And that's why Dusty was looking at her the way he did. And again, Philip Seymour Hoffman just really showing his acting abilities as well through his eyes and the way he's talking. And, it's like, it's a big deal. I mean, and I think if you ask any storm chaser out there, it's a really big deal whenever you have an F5. If you have an F5, it's a huge deal, because it's not only severely dangerous, but it's also something that doesn't happen as often. F5s, even though there have been F5s, they're almost, I guess, a kind of a rarity compared to mostly the other tornadoes. The higher the number goes up, the less often you see them. But yeah, apparently she figured out how to make Dorothy fly through what they're seeing right there. So Bill's like, yep, of course, of course, of course. And then they start picking things back up again. Dusty's got that smile on his face. I mean, I remember in the theater every single time Dusty had something to say, like right here when he says, "We're gone." Like whenever Dusty would have something funny to say like that, or even something like that, I remember hearing giggles in the movie theater, and which was always good. This film gives it to you all, man. It gives you the seriousness, the giggles and stuff like that. And yeah, there's actually, I think there's less trucks now. I think some of the trucks ended up getting demolished by one of the tornadoes. So of course, it's always good to have a dog. The old Pepsi can. So yeah, they're putting everything together at this point, and trying to make everything work better. And then of course you got everybody just basically saying, "Hey, you guys don't go that way," because there's a huge ass tornado over there. But those are the storm chasers. And then this is where you get the first glimpse of the F5, and it is a big one. And the effects are great and everything looks great, but let's be real here for a second. You're not going to get that close to an F5. You're just not. You're just not going to get that close to an F5. But it's all good. It's all good for the fun of the movie and for the sake of the movie. And yeah, at this point, it's basically pretty much all action and a whole bunch of fantasy as well. So I mean, but yeah, at this point, everybody's back in full swing at this point, from where they were before, like as if Bill never left. So, and Joe basically told him like not to follow too close or something like that. So they gotta keep their distance. So, and the team knows that everything is riding on those two people in that truck. So, and they're very far ahead. So, good stuff overall, man. Good stuff. And then, of course, they're getting ready to leave. And then this is actually their first shot in the film to where they actually place Dorothy into position. And then in previous attempts, they didn't even have that shot. So it's a very big moment for them. But they still have a backup Dorothy in case it doesn't work out. And so, and again, the special effects doing what the special effects do. But nope, didn't work out, unfortunately. And now Bill and Joe are going to have to basically drive away before that thing gets them too. So it's it's definitely gonna be a chase, but in reverse, to where the tornado chases the chasers instead of vice versa. And you know, um, kind of like a back and forth. So that's definitely something really scary. Definitely don't want that thing looking at you. And it's like, what is that? And it's a huge ass freaking fuel truck. And which also gives you an indication of how big the tornado is. It's like what, half a mile or a mile or something like that wide, something of that nature. I don't know, maybe half at the most, but I don't know. Maybe it's just over exaggerated, um, but yeah, gives you a little bit of an indication of just how big it is. But hey, and it ended up helping them get away. So good stuff. Effects with the fire, can't go wrong with that. And again, I'm pretty sure that most of the budget went into all like everything that you're basically going to see here. And I'm sure the director himself would have given some tidbits in terms of like how they pulled everything off and when they mixed the fake stuff with the real stuff and when they did the real stuff or the fake stuff. So, and then Dusty, he's like, "Did you see that explosion?" It's like, "Yeah, they were right there." It's like, you gotta help it. You can't help but love it. Philip Seymour Hoffman is just fucking awesome in this film. So they've got one more shot at Dorothy. So, but Jonas and his crew is there as well, so they have their shot or whatnot. So it's a big moment for them. But of course, Bill has his own view and stuff like that. So they're seeing it from a distance and they're wondering what's going on. And they actually try to help him at this point. So she's telling them that everything's too light and everything will toss it. And so yeah, Bill's basically telling him that, hey, this twister can shift. And look at where he's at. He's literally like right next to that thing like that. It's like, you serious? Yeah, and it's already shifting towards them at this point. And the twister is shifting and they're going right to it. tell him to get out of there, but he's not listening. And yep, there you go. Ooh. And the ladder going through, and then of course it sucks them right up. And it's all on camera, go figure. And then their whole crew's looking at it like, you serious? So at this point, this is their final chance right now in order to get their shit done, to give it one more shot with Dorothy. And it's a big deal because that thing is just demolishing anything it goes to. And it's too light for a tornado of this size and this strength, so yeah. And then they're basically dodging what the Twister's literally throwing at them, so and then there's a house. And that's one of the things about this film. It's like you see, like, the tornado is not too close to the house, right? But it's still blowing the house away. And to top it all off, yet these guys are going to be standing closer to that thing and they don't get sucked up by it or blown away. And Dorothy 4. Now, they're obviously doing this with sacrificing the truck in mind. So it's like you can't help but think, like, what are they gonna like, okay, you do it, but how the hell are you gonna get out of there? It's like you gotta think of stuff like that. And they're literally heading right to it. So man, I wonder if the second movie is gonna be as ballsy as this one in terms of what they'll have to do in order to accomplish whatever goal. So there has to be a relevant plot in order to make the film interesting at this point. So it's like what you know. But look at that. There's no way they'd get that close to the Twister without getting sucked up. There's no way. Yep. And there's Dorothy, and they accomplished their mission. They accomplished their goal. But they're also going to have to get the heck out of there. So they're getting all their data and shit. So major thing in the film. But right now, victory is short lived because those two guys got to get out of there. And they know it. So yeah, in a real life situation, there's no way you'd be able to get that close on foot to an F5, and yeah, you'd have to be very far away. But it's a movie, and it is what it is. So, but great movie nonetheless. Fun movie. Fun movie. And after I'm done with this commentary, I'm actually going to look up how much it actually costs in order, like for the budget and everything of this film, because people were really impressed with the special effects of this film back in the day. No doubt about that. They were impressed back then, and to this day, a whole bunch of things hold up. And obviously, in this day, you also, call bullshit. So, but it is what it is. And then, of course, they seek shelter, and there's a whole bunch of metal and shit like that. And they're like, "Yeah, I don't think so. I got to get out of here." Yeah, I mean, there's just that just wouldn't happen. They're way too close. That's cool though. They still pay attention to the details to how like the windows pretty much exploded and stuff like that. So, but the film does give you a nice little treat at the end though. Like when you get to see what the inside of one of these things look like. And then you obviously see the destruction and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's more than that. A lot more things would be getting affected, you know. Like you'd have to be very far away from a twister of this size in order to uh you know. But it is what it is. Fun little film, and then they get inside this little thing over here, and thankfully they run into some thick pipes that go down pretty deep into the ground. So yeah, pretty cool little sight here at the end. And those pipes basically just save their butts at this point. And I don't think a person can theoretically survive this, but I don't know. What do I know? And get to see the inside of one of these things, and looks like it just looks like a F1 or something like that on the inside, and then surrounded by like a bunch of clouds and stuff like that because it's just that powerful or whatnot. But pretty cool. And then that house survived, which is pretty cool as well. And then that's pretty much it. And then everything just sky's beautiful. You also see like towards the end you get to see like the trail that the tornado left on the land, which was pretty cool. But yeah, and then of course Joe and Bill obviously get back together, and the movie ends in a very high note. as far as the relationship goes, and then everything else goes. And this movie really was a ride to be had, and obviously in theaters it was pretty cool. So, um, but yeah, overall that's Twister, man, and that's how it was in the '90s. That's the there was, you could tell there was definitely some heart in this film. Definitely some heart in this film. It's a good little film with some heart, good special effects overall, and and a fun movie with good actors in it. So, and Bill Paxton has done plenty of good movies, very likable actor, and then Helen Hunt's done a good amount of movies, and as well as the TV show Mad About You, and then Philip Seymour Hoffman would end up being an Oscar winner, and just a very volatile, like a very like well-rounded actor in just any way. He can do it all. So at this point right now, they're like talking about the future. It's like, I'm doing the lab, you're doing all this other stuff. So, and it's like a cute little argument with smiles, like not really a legit argument, just one of those cute arguments. So and yeah, that's Twister. Ended with a kiss, basically, and in a happy ending. And in the second film, in order to capture the kind of spirit that this film had, they're gonna have a lot to do. They're gonna, and it was directed by the guy that directed Speed as well, so he kind of, and then of course, the writing was good. So, wow, Kathleen Kennedy was producing this. I didn't know that. I'm just looking at some of the credits here. Steven Spielberg produced it as well. So we're gonna see what happens. We're gonna see what happens with the second Twister film, or called Twisters. Eventually, that's gonna come out. So, and Helen, I just realized that Helen Hunt, obviously, I just paid attention that Helen Hunt actually was the lead role. Like, she took the lead credits. So, um, which means she was also the one that was paid the most in this film. So, uh, but Bill also just left a mark. Bill left a huge mark. In this film, and his character was very well written. And this film overall was just a really good freaking movie overall. It really is a definition of a movie, and it shows you a little bit of everything, and then it just gives you what it's supposed to give you in a bigger dose. But Twister was the movie, and right now in the end credits, you're seeing a bunch of clouds and stuff like that with some music in the background. But overall, Twister was absolutely, like for me, it was a big deal. So I was very, very, very much in love with this film, and I really love what they did with it, because, um, and I appreciate it even more now as an adult, because of how far this movie, like, let's put it this way: there hasn't been a tornado movie to match this one. Okay, this is the tornado movie. This is the top shelf tornado movie, and hopefully Twisters does it justice. If it's going to be a sequel, it's hopefully it does it justice. Apparently, Oscar writers are going to be writing the film, which is great. But at the same time, it's like, you know, um, it doesn't always mean that they're the right writers. Not always. Not always. It means potentially they could be, but we don't know. Only time will tell. But Twister is always going to hold a good place in my heart, and it was a great film, and with good acting, good actors, and it did what it was supposed to do. It there were times where it seems like it took itself seriously, and then definitely more times when it didn't. So it was a good flavor, or many different flavors of many different aspects to filmmaking. And whenever it wanted to be this, it did it well. Whenever it wanted to be that, it did it well. So, looking at it from a film perspective, you can't help but admire this film. Sure, it definitely does have its downsides and stuff like that, but But this film was awesome, and it was a fun ride. So uh, yeah, only time will tell until we get Twisters. So we'll see what happens then. But until then, this will end the commentary for this movie. For those of you guys that watched along, I hope you enjoyed it. I apologize about that little hiccup earlier with like the DVD just kind of freezing, and I had to go forward into the next scene. I tried to fix it, but couldn't do it. Didn't want to stop. So, um, but yeah, good film. Let me know if you enjoyed this film as much as I did. If you see it a similar way or something else, or fun facts and everything like that. And yeah, or are any of you into meteorology? That's another question. So anyway, that's all I got. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.